Chapter 2 of Frankenstein starts where Chapter 1 left off, focusing on Victor and Elizabeth's relationship. And the key word here is together. They were brought up together. Any differences in their characters merely led to their being drawn nearer together. Shelley uses the word harmony. It's a harmony and togetherness, of course, that will be jeopardised by Victor's actions in creating the monster. This is Shelley preparing us for the impact of the separation to come, the disharmony that will become evident in Victor's life. Elizabeth is also presented as a real contrast to Victor. She is calmer, whilst he has ardour. She busied herself with following the aerial creations of the poets and the sublime shapes of the mountains, whilst to him the world was a secret which he desired to divine. Victor is smitten with the thirst for knowledge, whilst Elizabeth is a saintly soul who shone like a shrine-dedicated lamp in our peaceful home. She's a domestic angel or goddess. Look at all the religious lexis and imagery. Saintly, shrine-dedicated, celestial, bless and spirit. She's almost worshipped. We're meant to be in awe of her. We're seeing a kind of idealisation of domesticity here, but remember that it's also a domestic environment which doesn't satisfy Victor, a sphere where he doesn't feel he can fulfil his ambitions. So on the one hand, Shelley might be idealising the family and the home, but on the other, she's also marking it as unfulfilling, stifling and inhibiting. To achieve his academic and professional dreams, Victor needs to leave the home. And what about the women? Well, they're hardly liberated, are they? Allocated stereotypical roles of passivity and powerlessness. Is Shelley idealising this environment or questioning society's reverence for it? You decide. What about Victor then? How's he portrayed in this chapter? Well, I think I'd make the point that he's different. He's different to everyone. We've already seen how different he is to Elizabeth, but look how different he is to his friend, the romantic hero Henry Clerval. Henry is a generic representation of romanticism. He's affectionate and sensitive and tries to get Victor to act plays and enter into masquerades to act out the stories of Arthur and the knights. He has a noble spirit and there are positive abstract nouns in abundance when he's being described. Generosity, kindness, tenderness, passion and ambition. Clerval throughout the novel is the calm, level-headed, balanced one, whereas Victor is the one whose temper was sometimes violent and passions vehement. You could say that in some ways Henry and Clerval act as foils to Victor, meaning that their opposing characteristics serve to highlight what Victor is like. Now, our response to Victor as a character is perhaps shaped a bit further in this chapter. Okay, so he's stuffed things up, but can we sympathise with him? After all, we've all stuffed things up, haven't we? Well, as he looks back at the roots of his downfall, what does he find? Well, if you ask me, he's not convinced he's prepared to take the blame. He's prepared to blame fate when he says destiny was too potent and her immutable laws had decreed my utter and terrible destruction. He's prepared to blame his father a fair bit, saying things like, if instead of this remark my father had taken pains to explain to me that the principles of Agrippa had been entirely exploded, I should certainly have thrown Agrippa aside. He's prepared to blame abstract concepts if they're not really part of his character for which he's accountable, but entities or forces in themselves which shape his life without any input from him. On the first page, for instance, he blames curiosity and later passion which arose like a mountain river from ignoble and almost forgotten sources. What can a man do if fate's got it in for him and passion has swept him away and his dad doesn't deal with the eccentric scientific queries of a quirkily reclusive teenager in quite the right way? What we do witness through Victor's eyes in this chapter, of course, is the thunderstorm that seems to act as a trigger for his future exploits. Victor says, as I stood at the door, on a sudden I beheld a stream of fire issue from an old and beautiful oak, which stood about 20 yards from our house. And so soon as the dazzling light finished, the oak had disappeared and nothing remained but a blasted stump. It's an act of beauty and horror, divine power and celestial destruction. And we're meant to get a glimpse of God when the lightning strikes, To the ancient Greeks, remember, the lightning bolt is the symbol of Zeus. The philosopher Heraclitus, for instance, said, "It is the thunderbolt that steers the course of all things." And it certainly steers the course of Victor's life. His attempt to play God ultimately destroys everything. And the image of the tree here emphasizes this. Look at how Victor describes the tree when they go out to visit it the following morning. "It was not splintered by the shock, but utterly reduced to thin ribbons of wood. I never beheld anything so utterly destroyed." There's a symbol if you want one. And the last 5 words of Victor in the chapter tell us what it's a symbol of. My utter and terrible destruction.